CEO's daughter rejected food cooked by everyone except the one she made. The CEO immediately married her. Hi, my very, very beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. I love you like my own family. Do you love me too? Let's start with a beautiful, loving and caring prayer for you, my precious family. Dear God, please bless my beautiful family watching this right now. May their hearts be filled with peace, their homes with joy, and their lives with unshakable love. Protect them from harm, guide their steps, and grant them the desires of their hearts. Heal every wound, dry every tear, and remind them how deeply they are loved. Let this day bring unexpected joy, sweet moments, and gentle miracles. Amen. Now, my beautiful family, do you think I'm delivering good content? Rate me out of 10. I'm waiting. And don't forget to like and comment if you're satisfied with me. Are you present? Comment yes if you are. Let's start this story with nothing but pure love. The aroma of sautéed garlic and herbs filled the massive kitchen as Sabine Tessa wiped beads of sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. All around her, the catering staff moved in practiced choreography, preparing elaborate appetizers for the 50 elite guests gathered in the mansion's grand hall. This was just another job, another chance to showcase her talent while remaining invisible to the wealthy patrons who would consume her creations without a thought for the hands that made them. Sabine, the prosciutto-wrapped asparagus for station. And 3, now, Chef Marcel barked from across the kitchen. Yes, chef. She didn't flinch at his tone. After 3 years at elite catering, she'd grown accustomed to Marcel's temper, especially during high-profile events like tonight's charity fundraiser hosted by Branko Luka, CEO of Luka International. As Sabine arranged the delicate appetizers on silver platters, she allowed herself a moment to absorb her surroundings. The kitchen alone was larger than her entire apartment, gleaming with copper pots and marble countertops that probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years. A familiar ache settled in her chest, not quite envy, but a wistful recognition of worlds so different from her own. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Sabine glanced around before quickly checking the message. Mom's fever back. Took meds. Don't worry. Focus on work. Love you. Sabine closed her eyes briefly, fighting the urge to leave immediately. Her mother had been battling lupus for 8 years, each flare-up stealing a bit more of her vibrant spirit. The medical bills had already consumed their modest savings, and now, is that for me? The small voice startled Sabine from her thoughts. She looked down to find a thin girl with enormous brown eyes and carefully braided hair standing beside the prep table. She couldn't be more than 8 years old, her designer dress a stark contrast to the kitchen's utilitarian space. You're not supposed to be in here, sweetheart, Sabine said gently, glancing toward the door. No one else seemed to have noticed the child's entrance. The party's in the big room. There's ice cream and chocolate fountains out there. The girl's serious expression didn't change. I don't like parties. Daddy makes me go, but everyone pinches my cheeks and says how much I've grown. She pointed to the bowl of soup Sabine had been absent-mindedly stirring, a simple creation she'd made for the staff's dinner, not the guests. What's that? It smells like... The girl trailed off, her eyes widening with an emotion Sabine couldn't quite place. It's just some caldo verde, Portuguese kale soup with chorizo. My father taught me to make it. Sabine smiled at the memory. He learned it from my grandmother, who said good soup can heal anything, even a broken heart. The girl moved closer, seemingly transfixed by the steaming liquid. My heart is broken, she whispered, so softly Sabine almost missed it. Something in those 4 simple words reached deep into Sabine's soul. Without thinking, she ladled a small portion into a tasting bowl. I'm not supposed to take food from strangers, the girl said, even as her eyes remained fixed on the soup. I'm Sabine, she replied, kneeling to meet the child at eye level. Now, we're not strangers. What's your name? Arya Luca. Sabine nearly dropped the bowl. This was Branko Luca's daughter, the man whose home they were in, whose company was paying thousands for tonight's event. Well, Arya Luca, I promise this soup is safe. My dad used to say it tastes like a warm hug. She offered the spoon, expecting rejection. To her surprise, Arya carefully accepted it, blowing on the liquid before taking a tentative sip. The child's expression transformed, softening into something like wonder. Without a word, she took another spoonful, then another. Arya, there you are. A frantic-looking woman in her 60s rushed into the kitchen. Everyone's been looking for you. Your father is worried sick. The woman stopped short at the sight of Arya actually eating, her mouth falling open in clear astonishment. Mrs. Brighton, she's having soup, Arya announced as though it were the most natural thing in the world. The woman, apparently Mrs. Brighton, stared at Sabine with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. She's eating, she said, her voice thick with emotion. She's actually eating a full portion. Before Sabine could respond, a deep voice came from the doorway. Arya. The kitchen fell silent as Branko Luca entered. Even in a room he didn't belong in, he commanded attention without effort. 6 feet of confidence in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his presence immediately changed the energy of the space. But it wasn't his authority that struck Sabine. It was the naked worry in his eyes as they found his daughter. Daddy, you have to try this soup, Arya said, seemingly oblivious to the tension. It tastes like when Mama was here. Pain flashed across Branko's features, there and gone so quickly, Sabine wondered if she'd imagined it. He approached slowly, his focus shifting from his daughter to Sabine, who suddenly felt acutely aware of her messy hair escaping its bun and the stains on her chef's coat. You made this? He asked, his voice lower and gentler than she'd expected. Yes, sir, it's just a simple family recipe, Sabine managed, fighting the unexpected heat rising to her cheeks under his gaze. Mrs. Brighton touched his arm. Branko, she's eaten almost the entire bowl, the first full meal in months. Understanding dawned on Sabine. The rumors she'd heard from other staff about the reclusive CEO raising a daughter alone after his wife's death, about the child who had stopped eating properly afterward. They were about this little girl with sad eyes who now seemed transported by a humble soup. Branko knelt beside his daughter, his expensive suit touching the kitchen floor without concern. Is it good, Butterfly? Arya nodded solemnly. It tastes like home, Daddy, like before. Something shifted in Branko's expression, a softening, a vulnerability that transformed his handsome features into something devastatingly human. When he looked up at Sabine, she felt a jolt of connection so unexpected it nearly took her breath. Thank you, he said simply, the words carrying weight far beyond common courtesy. Sabine could only nod, trapped in the magnetic pull of his gaze. For a suspended moment, the bustling kitchen, the party beyond, even her worries about her mother, all faded away. There was only this man looking at her as though she'd performed a miracle, and the strange certainty blooming in her chest that nothing would be quite the same after tonight. Your name, he said, not a question but a gentle demand. Sabine, Sabine Tessa. He repeated it softly, the syllables transformed by his slight accent. Sabine Tessa. He extended his hand, and when she took it, the contact sent warmth spiraling up her arm. I'm Branko Luca, though I suspect you know that. His palm was unexpectedly calloused against her own kitchen-roughened hand, not the soft grip of a man who only signed papers and made deals. As their hands remained connected a moment too long, Arya tugged at her father's sleeve. Can Sabine make soup tomorrow too? And maybe those biscuits Mama used to love. Branko's eyes never left Sabine's face. I think that might be arranged, he said, something like hope kindling in his gaze. If Ms. Tessa is willing. Before she could respond, Chef Marcel's voice cut through their bubble. "Sabine, Station 3 is waiting," and he stopped abruptly, noticing who she was speaking with. "Mr. Luca, sir, I apologize for any disturbance." "No disturbance," Branco replied, finally releasing Sabine's hand. "Your chef has made quite an impression on my daughter." He stood, once again the commanding CEO, but when he looked back at Sabine, she glimpsed the grateful father beneath the polished exterior. "We'll speak later, Ms. Tessa. I believe we have matters to discuss." As he guided Aria from the kitchen, the little girl waved over her shoulder. Sabine waved back, her hand still tingling from his touch, her mind reeling with possibilities she'd never dared imagine. For the first time in years, the weight of her responsibilities, her mother's illness, their mounting debts, her deferred dreams, felt somehow lighter, illuminated by an unexpected ray of hope. "Well," Mrs. Brighton said quietly beside her, "I haven't seen that look on either of their faces since Elizabeth passed." She studied Sabine with newfound interest. "Whatever you put in that soup, my dear, it wasn't just kale and chorizo." As Mrs. Brighton followed Branco and Aria out, Sabine returned to her station, working on autopilot, while her mind replayed those moments. The gentle strength in Branco's hand, the intense connection in his dark eyes, the way his entire being had transformed when his daughter took that first spoonful of soup. "Sabine, focus!" Marcel snapped. "Whatever just happened, you're still on my clock." She nodded, forcing herself back to the present. Yet as she arranged prosciutto-wrapped asparagus on silver platters destined for guests whose names she would never know, Sabine couldn't shake the feeling that something profound had shifted in the universe. That somehow a simple bowl of soup had opened a door between worlds that were never meant to touch, and that walking through that door might lead to everything she'd ever wanted, or everything she most feared. In the grand hall beyond the kitchen, Branco Luca moved among his guests with practiced charm, his hand resting protectively on his daughter's shoulder. But his thoughts remained in the kitchen with the woman whose gentle hands had accomplished what an army of specialists could not, bringing his daughter back to life, one spoonful at a time. And perhaps, though he hardly dared admit it even to himself, beginning to thaw his own frozen heart along with her. Chapter 2. Stirring Emotions. 3 days after the charity event, Sabine stood at her mother's bedside, gently applying a cool compress to her forehead. The lupus flare-up had worsened, leaving Constance Tessa exhausted and feverish despite the medication. "You should be at work," her mother whispered, eyes fluttering open. "We need the hours." "Shh," Sabine soothed. "Marcel gave me the day off." A small lie. In truth, she'd called in sick, knowing it might cost her the job, but unable to leave her mother alone in this state. A knock at the apartment door startled them both. Sabine frowned. They rarely had visitors, especially on a Tuesday morning. "It's probably Mrs. Winters from downstairs," she assured her mother. "I'll be right back." Sabine padded through their small apartment, past the water stains on the ceiling, and the second-hand furniture they'd carefully maintained. When she opened the door, the last person she expected to see was Branco Luca. He stood in the dimly lit hallway, immaculate in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 6 months of her rent. Their eyes met, and the same jolt of connection she'd felt in his kitchen returned, stronger now, without the chaos of the catering event surrounding them. "Mr. Luca," she managed, suddenly acutely aware of her faded sweatpants and t-shirt, her hair piled messily atop her head. "Ms. Tessa," his voice held the same gentle intensity she remembered. "May I come in? I believe we have matters to discuss." Sabine hesitated, pride warring with curiosity. Their apartment was nothing like the mansion he owned. Everything here was worn, modest, loved but tired. Finally, she stepped aside. "My mother is ill," she said simply. "I need to check on her regularly." Something flickered in his eyes. Understanding, perhaps. "Of course, I won't take much of your time." As he entered, Sabine watched him take in their small living space. To his credit, his expression revealed nothing but polite interest. "How did you find me?" she asked, gesturing for him to sit on a faded sofa. "Elite Catering was reluctant to share employee information," he replied with a slight smile. "But they became more cooperative when I mentioned considering them for all future Luca International events." Sabine crossed her arms. "That sounds like leverage, Mr. Luca." "Branco," he corrected, still standing. "And yes, I suppose it was. I can be quite determined when something matters." The intensity of his gaze made it clear he wasn't just talking about finding her address. "Sabine?" Her mother's voice called weakly from the bedroom. "Who is it, sweetheart?" "Excuse me," Sabine murmured, hurrying to check on her mother. She found Constance attempting to sit up. "Mom, please rest. It's just someone about a job." Her mother's perceptive eyes narrowed. "On a Tuesday morning, wearing cologne that expensive. Don't lie to your mama, Sabine Tessa." Despite her worry, Sabine smiled. Even ill, her mother missed nothing. "It's the man from Saturday's event, the host. His daughter connected with my cooking." "Well, don't leave him sitting out there," Constance chided weakly. "It's rude. I'm fine for a few minutes." When Sabine returned to the living room, she found Branco standing by their small bookshelf, examining a framed photograph of Sabine and her parents from years ago. He turned at her approach, and the genuine warmth in his smile caught her off guard. "Your mother?" he asked. "Yes, she insists I not be rude to guests, even unexpected ones." Sabine gestured to the sofa again, and this time he accepted, though he looked almost comically out of place on their humble furniture. "Aria hasn't stopped talking about your soup," he said without preamble. "Or about you." Sabine's heart warmed at the thought of the serious little girl. "She's a special child." "Yes." Something vulnerable crossed his features. "And since meeting you, she's eaten properly at every meal, the first time in nearly 8 months." The significance of this wasn't lost on Sabine. "I'm glad I could help. Even accidentally." It wasn't accidental. His directness was disarming. "There was something in the way you spoke to her, something in what you created. Mrs. Brighton said you mentioned your father teaching you the recipe?" Sabine nodded, surprised he remembered such a detail. "He died when I was 15. Cancer. He was a chef at a small Portuguese restaurant in East Harbor. Not fancy, but he could make magic from simple ingredients." "Like his daughter," Branco said quietly. Heat rose to Sabine's cheeks. "Why are you here, Mr. Luca?" "Branco," he corrected, again more gently this time. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I want to offer you a position, Sabine, as our private chef." She blinked, certain she'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "I have a staff that manages the house, but the kitchen position has been problematic. We've gone through 5 chefs since Elizabeth died. None could get Aria to eat consistently." His eyes held hers, intent and serious. "Until you." The offer was so unexpected that Sabine laughed. "You want me to leave Elite Catering to cook for your family, based on 1 bowl of soup?" "Based on a miracle," he corrected, his voice low and intense. "Do you have any idea what it's been like watching my daughter fade away? The specialists, the therapists, the nutritionists, none of them could reach her. But you..." He trailed off, visibly collecting himself. "The position includes private quarters in the East Wing, full benefits, and a salary that I believe you'll find generous." Sabine stood, walking to the window that overlooked the crowded street below. His offer felt like a fantasy, a solution to their financial struggles, a chance to practice her craft without Marcel's constant criticism. But it also meant entering a world she didn't belong in, becoming dependent on this man whose very presence made her pulse quicken in ways both thrilling and terrifying. "My mother..." would be welcome, he interjected. The East Wing has a separate apartment with its own entrance. Privacy, space, and I would ensure she has access to medical care. Sabine turned, studying him. Why would you do all this for a stranger? Branko stood, closing the distance between them with measured steps. Up close, she could see the faint circles beneath his eyes, evidence that wealth didn't exempt him from suffering. 3 years ago, I lost my wife to a sudden aneurysm, he said quietly. Since then, I've watched my daughter retreat from the world. Food becoming her way of controlling the uncontrollable. But with you, his voice roughened. With you, she ate. She spoke about before. She remembered joy. He was close enough now that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. I would do anything to keep that light in her eyes, Sabine. The raw honesty in his voice touched something deep inside her. Still, doubt persisted. I'm not trained like your other chefs must have been. I learned from my father, from community. College courses I could afford. You have something more valuable than formal training, he interrupted gently. You cook with heart, with memory, with love. That's what Arya responded to, what I responded to. The last words hung between them, charged with meaning neither was ready to acknowledge. A weak cough from the bedroom broke the moment. Sabine stepped back, reality reasserting itself. I need to think about this. It's a lot to consider. Branko nodded, respecting her space. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a business card, pressing it into her palm. His fingers lingered against hers, warm and unexpectedly calloused. My personal number is on the back. Call me when you decide. As he moved toward the door, he paused. I should tell you, Arya's already planning the menu she wants you to make. She seems quite certain you'll say yes. Despite herself, Sabine smiled. She has your confidence, I see. Or perhaps my hope, he replied softly, his eyes conveying far more than his words. After he left, Sabine returned to her mother's bedroom, the business card clutched in her hand like a talisman. Well? Constance asked, more alert now. What did the handsome man want? Sabine sat on the edge of the bed. How did you know he was handsome? Your face told me everything, her mother replied with a knowing smile. Now tell me the rest. As Sabine explained Branko's offer, she watched her mother's expression shift from surprise to thoughtful calculation. This could be the answer to our prayers, baby, Constance said when she finished. The medical benefits alone. But it means leaving everything we know, Sabine countered. Living in his world, by his rules. Her mother reached for her hand, squeezing with surprising strength. Your father always said your cooking would take you places. He just didn't know how far. She studied Sabine's troubled expression. There's something else, isn't there? Something about this man that scares you. Sabine thought of Branko's intense gaze, the electricity that seemed to arc between them whenever they were close, the vulnerability beneath his powerful exterior. He makes me feel things, Mama, things I've never felt before, and I don't know if that's wonderful or terrifying. Constance's soft laugh turned into a gentle cough. When she recovered, she patted Sabine's cheek. The best things in life are both, my darling, both. Later that night, after her mother had finally fallen asleep, Sabine stood in their small kitchen, her sanctuary, the place where she felt most herself. Could she find that same peace in Branko Luca's world of wealth and privilege? Could she help heal his daughter's heart without risking her own? She took out her phone and the business card, her finger hovering over the screen. Before she could reconsider, she typed a simple message. For Arya, yes. His response came almost immediately. For both of us, thank you. Sabine pressed the phone to her heart, feeling as though she stood at the edge of a cliff, about to step into empty air, with only the hope that something wonderful waited below. Whatever came next, she knew with certainty that saying yes to Branko, Luca had just changed the course of her life forever. Chapter 3. Simmering Attraction. After 3 weeks in the Luca mansion, Sabine had established a routine that felt almost natural. Each morning she rose early to prepare Aria's breakfast, carefully crafting dishes that tempted the child's still fragile appetite. Afternoons were spent planning menus, shopping for ingredients. Branko had insisted she have unlimited access to his accounts for this purpose, and exploring the vast professional-grade kitchen that was now her domain. The transition had been smoother than expected. Her mother's health had improved dramatically with access to proper medical care, and the private apartment in the East Wing offered more space and comfort than they'd ever known. Yet despite these practical benefits, Sabine found herself constantly aware of the invisible boundaries between employer and employee, constantly vigilant about maintaining her professional distance from Branko. A distance that grew more difficult to maintain with each passing day. She was chopping herbs for the evening meal when Aria appeared, her school uniform slightly rumpled, her expression thoughtful. "Can I help?" the child asked, climbing onto a stool at the counter without waiting for permission. Sabine smiled, sliding a small cutting board toward her. "These chives need to be cut into tiny pieces. Think you can handle it?" Aria nodded solemnly, accepting. The child-safe knife Sabine had purchased specifically for these moments. Over the past weeks, the kitchen had become their shared sanctuary, a place where Aria's natural reserve melted away amid stories and simple cooking tasks. "My mom used to let me help sometimes," Aria said, carefully mimicking Sabine's cutting technique. "But Mrs. Brighton says I shouldn't talk about her too much because it makes Daddy sad." Sabine glanced at the child, noting the conflicted expression on her young face. "I think," she said carefully, "that memories are like treasures. Sometimes they hurt to look at, but that doesn't mean we should hide them away." Aria's hands stilled. "Do you have treasures that hurt?" "Many," Sabine admitted, thinking of her father's worn recipe notebook, her most prized possession. "When my dad died, I couldn't even look at a kitchen for months. It hurt too much." "What changed?" Sabine smiled at the perceptiveness of the question. "I realized that cooking made me feel close to him again, like he was still teaching me, watching over my shoulder." Aria considered this, her small brow furrowed. "When I eat your food, I sometimes remember Mom's smile. Is that weird?" "Not at all," Sabine assured her, throat tightening with emotion. "Food carries memories, feelings. It's one of the most powerful connections we have." "Is that why Daddy watches you all the time?" The question caught Sabine completely off guard. "What do you mean, sweetie?" "When you're cooking, or when you're reading to me, or really any time you're in the room." Aria stated this as simple fact, the way children often do. His face gets all soft, like when he looks at old pictures of Mom, but different too. Heat crept up Sabine's neck. She'd felt Branko's gaze following her, of course, had been acutely aware of his presence whenever they occupied the same space. But she'd convinced herself it was merely a father's vigilance, ensuring his daughter's caretaker was performing adequately. "Your father is just making sure I'm taking good care of you," she managed, focusing intently on the sauce she was preparing. Aria looked unconvinced, but returned to her chives. "Mrs. Brighton says you're not like us," she said after a moment, her tone casual but her words deliberate. "That you come from different circles." Sabine's hand tightened on her wooden spoon. Despite Mrs. Brighton's impeccable manners, the older woman's disapproval had been evident from the beginning. Subtle comments about Sabine's unusual background and different upbringing that never quite crossed into outright rudeness. "Mrs. Brighton is right that I grew up very differently than you," Sabine said carefully. "But differences aren't always bad, are they? They're just different." "I like different," Aria declared, pushing her completed pile of chives toward Sabine with evident pride. "Daddy says different is what makes the world interesting." "Your father is a wise man," Sabine replied, relieved when Arya shifted to chattering about school. Later that evening, after Arya had been tucked into bed with a story and Sabine had cleaned the kitchen to her exacting standards, she found herself restless. The day's conversation with Arya lingered in her mind, particularly the child's casual observation about Branko watching her. Sleep would be elusive tonight. She could feel it. On such nights in her old apartment, she would have retreated to the kitchen, experimenting with recipes or baking bread, activities that soothed her overactive thoughts. Perhaps the mansion's kitchen could serve the same purpose. The house was silent as she made her way down the grand staircase, the plush carpet muffling her footsteps. She'd exchanged her day clothes for loose cotton pants and a soft t-shirt, her hair freed from its usual practical bun to fall in natural curls past her shoulders. The kitchen lights were already on, stopping her in the doorway. Branko sat at the island counter, a tumbler of amber liquid in one hand, a file folder open before him. He looked up at her entrance, surprise giving way to a warm smile that reached his eyes. "I thought I was the only night owl in the house," he said, closing the folder. "Trouble sleeping?" Sabine hesitated in the doorway, suddenly aware of her casual attire, the vulnerability of being alone with him in the quiet house. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I just thought I might bake something." "At midnight?" His smile widened, transforming his usually serious features. "What's your poison of choice for insomnia? Cookies? Bread? Soufflé?" The teasing note in his voice emboldened her to enter fully, moving toward the refrigerator. "Warm milk with honey. And cinnamon, actually. My mother's remedy." She paused, gesturing to his glass. "Though your method might work faster." He chuckled, the sound rich and unguarded. "Scotch and financial reports. A dangerous combination. One makes the other either. More tolerable or more depressing, I haven't decided which." Sabine began gathering her ingredients, falling into the comfortable rhythm of the kitchen. "Would you like some? The milk, not the reports." "I haven't had warm milk since I was a boy in Croatia," he said, watching as she moved efficiently around the space. "My grandmother made it when storms frightened me." "You were afraid of storms?" Sabine asked, trying to imagine this powerful man as a vulnerable child. "Terrified," he admitted freely. "The thunder in the mountains where we lived was like the gods themselves were at war." He set aside his scotch. "Yes to the milk, please." As Sabine worked, she felt his eyes on her, just as Arya had described. An almost tangible weight, not unpleasant but impossible to ignore. When she finally slid a steaming mug before him, their fingers brushed briefly, sending that now familiar spark through her veins. "Thank you," he said, his accent slightly more pronounced than usual. "For this, and for everything with Arya. She's blooming with you here." Sabine took the seat across from him, cradling her own mug. "She's an extraordinary child, wise beyond her years. Too wise sometimes." He took a careful sip, his expression softening with pleasure. "This is perfect. The secret is a pinch of cardamom," she confided. "Gives it depth." His eyes held hers over the rim of his mug. "You seem to specialize in adding depth to ordinary things." The compliment flustered her more than it should have. "I just cook what feels right. It's more than that." He sat down, his mug studying her with an intensity that made her heart race. "You've brought life back to this house, Sabine. Not just with your cooking, but with your presence, your spirit." She dropped her gaze to her mug, uncertain how to respond to the naked emotion in his voice. "I'm just doing my job." "No," he said quietly. "What you're doing could never be contained in a job description." The silence that followed was charged with unspoken possibilities. Sabine searched for a neutral topic. "Arya mentioned Croatia today. She said you used to take her there every summer." Relief and something like gratitude flickered across his features at the change of subject. "Yes, My family still has the house where I grew up. It's nothing like this." He gestured to their opulent surroundings. "Just a simple stone home in the hills above Split, but it's where I feel most myself. Will you take her this year?" A shadow crossed his face. "I haven't since Elizabeth died. It was too painful. Elizabeth loved it there." Sabine nodded, understanding all too well how places could become haunted by absence. "After my father died, I couldn't go back to his restaurant for almost a year. Then one day I realized I was avoiding the very place where I could feel closest to him." Branko's eyes softened. "And did you go back?" "I did. I cried through an entire shift, ruined 3 orders, and got yelled at by the head chef." She smiled at the memory. "But afterward I felt like I could breathe again." He studied her thoughtfully. "You speak about grief with such grace." "Not grace," she corrected gently. "Experience. You never get over losing someone you love. You just learn to carry it differently." Without warning, Branko reached across the counter and took her hand. His thumb traced gentle circles on her skin, sending warmth cascading through her. "How did you become so wise, Sabine Tessa?" The tenderness in his touch, in his voice, made it hard to form coherent thoughts. "Life doesn't discriminate with its lessons," she managed. "Rich or poor, we all face the same fundamental heartbreaks." His fingers tightened slightly on hers. "When I'm with you," the lines between employer and he hesitated, searching for the right word. "Friend," she supplied, her voice barely above a whisper. His eyes darkened. "Is that what we are, Sabine? Friends?" The question hung between them, loaded with implication. Sabine knew she should disentangle her hand from his, maintain the professional boundaries that protected them both. Instead, she found herself turning her palm upward, her fingers intertwining with his. "I don't know what we are," she admitted, her honesty surprising even herself. "I just know that when I'm with you, I feel alive," he finished for her, his voice rough with emotion. After a long darkness, he stood, still holding her hand, gently tugging her to her feet. The counter remained between them, yet it felt as though nothing separated them at all. With deliberate slowness, he lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm that sent fire racing through her veins. "You've awakened something in me, Sabine," he murmured against her skin. "Something I thought died with Elizabeth." Sabine's heart hammered against her ribs. "Branko, The sudden clatter of footsteps interrupted whatever she might have said. They stepped apart quickly as Mrs. Brighton appeared in the doorway, her robe cinched tightly around her waist, her expression shifting from concern to disapproval as she took in the scene. "Aria's having nightmares again," she announced, her eyes lingering on Sabine's unbound hair, their empty mugs. "She's asking for you, Branko." "Of course," he responded immediately, all traces of vulnerability replaced by paternal concern. But as he moved to follow Mrs. Brighton, he paused beside Sabine. "This conversation isn't finished," he whispered, so softly only she could hear. After they left, Sabine remained in the kitchen, her palms still tingling from the press of his lips, her mind whirling with possibilities both exhilarating and terrifying. She had come to the Luca mansion to cook for a grieving child, to secure financial stability for her mother's care. She had never intended to develop feelings for her employer, a man from a world so different from her own, a man still haunted by his wife's memory. Yet as she finally made her way back to her quarters, Sabine acknowledged the truth she could no longer deny. Whatever was growing between them went far beyond friendship or professional respect. And despite all the reasons to guard her heart, she found herself increasingly unable to resist the magnetic pull drawing her toward Branko Luca, a pull that promised either the greatest joy she had ever known or the most devastating heartbreak. In the quiet darkness of her room, Sabine touched her fingers to her lips, imagining what might have happened if Mrs. Brighton hadn't interrupted them. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream of something beyond survival, beyond practical concerns, to dream of passion, of connection, of love. Dangerous dreams, perhaps, but as sleep finally claimed her, Sabine couldn't bring herself to regret them. Chapter 4. Boiling Point. "You've changed," Letitia said, stirring her coffee as she studied Sabine across the cafe table. 6 weeks had passed since Sabine had moved into the Luca mansion, and this was her first opportunity to meet her oldest friend. "And I don't just mean the fancy clothes." Sabine glanced down at her simple but expensive blouse, a gift from Branko after she'd admired it in a store window during a shopping trip for Aria. "The clothes are just part of the job." "But is it just a job anymore?" Letitia asked, her tone gentle but probing. "The way your eyes light up when you talk about that man, about his daughter, it sounds like something else entirely." Heat crept up Sabine's neck. Since that night in the kitchen, a night that had repeated itself several times, each encounter charged with growing tension, her relationship with Branko had shifted into something undefined, yet undeniable. Nothing physical had happened beyond that kiss on her palm, but their shared glances, lingering touches, and late-night conversations had built a connection that became more powerful with each passing day. "It's complicated," Sabine admitted. "He's my employer, Tish. There are boundaries. Boundaries that seem awful blurry from where I'm sitting." Letitia leaned forward. "Girl, I'm happy if you're happy, but be careful. People like Branko Luka don't usually end up with people from East Harbor. In their world, we're the help, not the happily ever after." The words stung precisely because they echoed Sabine's own deepest fears. "You don't know him." "Maybe not. But I know how these stories usually end." Letitia squeezed her hand. "Just don't forget where you come from, Sabine. Don't forget who you are." The conversation lingered in Sabine's mind as she returned to the mansion that afternoon, troubling her as she prepared Aria's after-school snack. Was she changing? Becoming someone unrecognizable to the people who'd known her longest? "You seem distracted." Branko's voice came from the doorway, startling her from her thoughts. He moved into the kitchen with the fluid grace she'd come to admire, his work attire replaced by casual slacks and a soft sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. "Just thinking," she replied, managing a smile. He stepped closer, studying her face with an intensity that made her pulse quicken, worrying more like. His fingers brushed a stray curl from her face, the casual intimacy of the gesture sending warmth cascading through her. "Tell me." Before she could respond, Mrs. Brighton entered the kitchen, her footsteps faltering slightly as she observed their proximity. Sabine stepped back instinctively, but not before noticing the older woman's lips tighten with disapproval. "Branko, the Winterstone Gala committee called again," Mrs. Brighton announced, pointedly ignoring Sabine. "They need confirmation on your attendance for Saturday and whether you'll be bringing a guest." Something flickered in Branko's eyes. Determination, perhaps. "Please inform them I'll be attending." He turned to Sabine, his gaze holding hers. "With Ms. Tessa as my companion." Mrs. Brighton's sharp intake of breath was audible in the suddenly charged atmosphere. "Surely you mean to bring Aria? She's been looking forward to seeing the Whitfield children." "Aria will be staying with her grandparents this weekend," Branko replied, his tone brooking no argument. "I've already discussed it with her." When Mrs. Brighton departed, her rigid posture communicating volumes, Sabine turned to Branko in confusion. "You want me to attend a gala? With you?" His expression softened. "Is that so surprising?" "Branko, I don't belong in that world. I wouldn't know how to act, what to say." "You would be yourself," he interrupted, taking her hands in his. "The same remarkable woman who brought my daughter back to life. The same woman who sees me, not just the CEO or the widower or the fortune." His thumbs traced gentle patterns on her skin, The woman I can't stop thinking about. The naked vulnerability in his voice weakened her resistance. Still, practical concerns remained. I don't have anything to wear to something like that. His smile was almost boyish. Let me worry about that. The dress arrived the next afternoon, a creation of midnight blue silk that flowed like water through Sabine's fingers. Along with it came a note in Branco's distinctive handwriting. Beauty needs no embellishment, but perhaps this might make the evening more comfortable. The Saturday evening found Sabine standing before the mirror in her quarters, barely recognizing. The woman reflected back. The dress fit perfectly, clinging to her curves before cascading to the floor in elegant waves. She had arranged her curls into a sophisticated updo, applied subtle makeup to enhance her features, and added the simple pearl earrings that had been her mother's sole luxury. "You look like a princess," Constance said from the doorway, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Your father would be so proud." Sabine turned, suddenly uncertain. "Do I look like I'm trying too hard? Like I'm pretending to be something I'm not?" "No, baby." Her mother approached, adjusting a stray curl with tender fingers. "You look like Sabine Tessa, just dressed up for a special night." She studied her daughter's anxious expression. "The question is, does this night make you happy? Does he make you happy?" The answer rose instantly to Sabine's lips. Undeniable. In its truth, yes, more than I ever thought possible. The Winterstone Gala proved every bit as intimidating as Sabine had feared. Held in a historic ballroom downtown, the event gathered Charleston's elite for an evening of philanthropy disguised as social exhibition. As Branco guided her through the crowd, his hand warm against the small of her back, Sabine felt the weight of curious stares and whispered comments. "Breathe," he murmured close to her ear. "They're just people. Very rich, very judgmental people," she whispered back, winning a low chuckle from him that eased some of her tension. For the first hour, Sabine managed to navigate the unfamiliar terrain with reasonable success. Branco remained close, introducing her simply as Sabine Tessa, the remarkable woman who's brought joy back to our home. If anyone noted her role as his chef, they were too polite to mention it directly. It was during a moment alone, while Branco was pulled into a conversation with the mayor, that Sabine overheard the conversation that shattered the evening's fragile magic. "Can't believe he brought the help." A woman's voice drifted from behind a massive floral arrangement. "Elizabeth has barely been gone 3 years." "She's pretty enough, I suppose," another voice responded, in an exotic way. "But really, the cook? How cliché. She's clearly after his money. These girls from those neighborhoods always have an angle. Poor Branco must be blinded by grief or something else entirely." Sabine's champagne glass trembled in her hand, her chest tightening until she could barely breathe. Every insecurity, every doubt Letitia had voiced came rushing back with devastating force. When Branco found her minutes later, she was already retrieving her wrap from the coat check. "Sabine, what's happened?" "I don't belong here," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I never will." "What are you talking about?" He reached for her, but she stepped back. "I heard them, Branco. About the help you brought to replace your wife. About how I'm clearly after your money." The words tasted bitter on her tongue. "Maybe they're right. Maybe we're both just pretending this could ever work." Pain flashed across his features. "You know that's not true, do I?" She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm evening. "What are we doing, Branco? Playing at some fairy tale where the prince falls for Cinderella? Real life doesn't work that way." "It can," he insisted, stepping closer, "if we're brave enough to make it happen." For a heartbeat, she wavered, the naked emotion in his eyes nearly undoing her resolve. But then she caught sight of a group of women watching them, their perfectly made-up faces cold with judgment. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I need to go home." "Sabine, please, not to the mansion." she clarified, her heart breaking at the confusion in his eyes. Home, to who I really am. Before he could respond, before her courage failed, Sabine turned and walked away, each step feeling like it tore something essential from her chest. Behind her, she felt the weight of Branko's gaze, heard him call her name once more, but she didn't look back. Outside, the warm night air offered no comfort as tears finally spilled down her cheeks. The fairy tale was over. Reality had intruded, harsh and uncompromising, but as the taxi carried her away from the glittering ballroom, from Branko's devastated expression, Sabine couldn't silence the voice in her heart that whispered she was making the greatest mistake of her life. Chapter 5. Sweet Reconciliation. 3 days had passed since Sabine fled the Winterstone Gala. 3 days of silence that felt like an eternity. She'd returned to her old apartment in East Harbor, the familiar, surroundings both comforting and confining after the expansive luxury of the Luca mansion. Her mother had remained in the East Wing apartment, her health still too fragile to risk the move back to their former living conditions. "You're being stubborn," Letitia remarked, watching Sabine aggressively knead bread dough at her tiny kitchen counter. "The man's called you 12 times. 13, Sabine corrected, pushing her palms into the dough with unnecessary force, and sent flowers and had Arya call. That last one had nearly broken her resolve. The little girl's confused voice asking when Sabine was coming home had pierced her heart like a blade. "So why are you still here instead of there?" Letitia asked, her earlier warnings apparently forgotten. Sabine paused, brushing flour from her hands. "Because you were right. We come from different worlds, his friends, his social circle. They made that abundantly clear. And since when does Sabine Tessa let other people decide what she can and can't do?" Letitia raised an eyebrow. "The girl I grew up with climbed the water tower when the boys said she couldn't. She applied to culinary programs when her math teacher said she should settle for waitressing. This is different. Is it, or are you just scared?" Before Sabine could formulate a response, a knock sounded at the door. Letitia moved to answer it, returning with a puzzled expression and a large manila envelope. "Special delivery," she said, handing it to Sabine. "Guy in a suit. Very James Bond." Inside the envelope, Sabine found a stack of papers, meal plans, recipes, and detailed instructions written in her own hand. The preparations she'd made for Arya's meals before leaving for the gala, intended to last through the weekend. Beneath them was a note in Branko's distinctive handwriting. "She won't eat anything else. Neither will I." "Well?" Letitia prompted, watching emotions play across Sabine's face. "She's refusing to eat," Sabine whispered, guilt washing over her. Whatever her feelings for Branko, Arya was an innocent child who had already experienced too much loss. Letitia studied her friend's troubled expression. "You know, when you first told me about this job, I thought you were crazy. Rich white guy, big mansion, it sounded like trouble." She perched on the edge of the counter. "But then I saw how your eyes lit up talking about that little girl, about him, and I realized something." "What?" "That maybe some risks are worth taking." Letitia squeezed her shoulder. "Not every story has to end the same way, Sabine." As darkness fell, Sabine found herself in her old neighborhood's small park, sitting on a swing as she had countless times since childhood. The night air carried the familiar scents of the harbor, salt, fish, diesel, yet for the first time, they didn't feel like home. Home had become something else, Arya's delighted laughter when a recipe turned out perfectly. Her mother's peaceful smile as she sat in the sunroom, strength gradually returning to her frail body. And Branko, the way his eyes sought hers across rooms, the gentle pressure of his hand at the small of her back, the quiet conversations that stretched into the night. "I thought I might find you here." The deep voice startled her from her reverie. Branko stood a few feet away, illuminated by the park's single street lamp. Gone was the immaculate businessman. He wore jeans and a simple sweater, his hair tousled as though he'd been running his hands through it, dark circles under his eyes suggesting sleepless nights. Sabine's heart thundered against her ribs. How? Did you know where to look? Your mother, he admitted, moving closer but not sitting. She said you always came here to think. Silence stretched between them, weighted with unspoken words. Finally, Sabine found her voice. How's Arya? Miserable. No accusation colored his tone, just simple truth. She said the kitchen doesn't smell right without you. Sabine looked down at her hands, twisted in her lap. I'm sorry I left that way, without saying goodbye to her. Are you sorry you left? The directness of his question, the vulnerability beneath it, made her look up. What she saw in his eyes stole her breath. Not anger or hurt, but hope, fragile and determined. I don't know what I am, she admitted. Confused, scared. I heard those women at the gala, Branko. What they said about me, about us. I don't give a damn what they said, he interrupted, his accent thickening with emotion. Or what anyone says. The only opinions that matter to me are Arya's and yours. He lowered himself onto the swing beside her, the children's playground equipment, creaking under his weight. When Elizabeth died, I thought I'd never feel anything again. I went through the motions for Arya's sake, but inside, nothing. Empty. His voice roughened. Then you walked into our lives with your soup and your stories and your remarkable heart, and suddenly I was feeling everything again. Too much sometimes. Sabine's throat tightened. Branko, let me finish, he said gently. Please. When she nodded, he continued. I know we come from different backgrounds. I know there will be people who don't understand what's between us. But Sabine, he reached for her hand, his fingers warm against hers. I don't care where you're from. I care who you are. And who you are is the woman I've fallen in love with. The declaration hung in the night air, powerful in its simplicity. Sabine's heart seemed to stop, then restart with painful intensity. You can't mean that, she whispered. I've never meant anything more. He shifted to kneel before her swing, both her hands now clasped in his. These past days without you have been torture. The house feels empty, lifeless. Arya keeps asking when you're coming home, and I have no answer because I'm wondering the same thing. His thumbs traced gentle patterns on her skin. Come home, Sabine. Not as our chef, but as part of our family. Tears slipped down Sabine's, cheeks unchecked. I'm scared, Branko. What if it doesn't work? What if those people are right, and I'll never fit in your world? Then we create our own world, he said simply. One where it doesn't matter what neighborhood you grew up in, or what school you attended. He reached up to brush away her tears. All that matters is this, what we feel for each other, what we could build together. The sincerity in his eyes, the tenderness in his touch, crumbled the last of Sabine's defenses. When he drew her to her feet, she went willingly, stepping into the circle of his arms, as though returning to a place she'd always belonged. I've missed you, she whispered against his chest, feeling his heart beating strong and steady beneath her cheek. So much. His arms tightened around her. Then come home with me tonight, please. Sabine pulled back enough to look into his face, seeing her own longing reflected in his eyes. To the mansion. To me, he corrected softly. Wherever, that is. The kiss, when it finally came, felt like both beginning and homecoming. His lips moved over hers with gentle hunger, his hands cradling her face as though she were something infinitely precious. Sabine melted into him, all doubts temporarily, silenced by the rightness of being in his arms. When they finally parted, both breathless, Branko rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Sabine Tessa, with everything I am. Please believe that. The words she'd been afraid to even think unfurled within her, undeniable in their truth. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have since that first night in your kitchen." His smile transformed his face, years of grief and worry momentarily erased. "Then come home. To Arya. To me." "Yes," she whispered, sealing her answer with another kiss. The drive to Sabine's apartment to collect her essentials was quiet, their hands intertwined on the console between them. As Branko waited in the living room, she quickly packed a bag, her movements filled with a new certainty. "You're going back?" Letitia stated from the doorway, her expression knowing. "Yes," Sabine acknowledged, meeting her friend's gaze. "I'm following my heart." Letitia smiled. "About time." She glanced toward the living room. "He loves you. It's written all over his face when he looks at you." "I know," Sabine said, the admission filling her with wonder. "And I love him." "Then that's all that matters." Letitia hugged her tightly. "The rest is just details." When they arrived at the mansion, the lights glowed warmly in the windows despite the late hour. Before Branko could cut the engine, the front door flew open and Arya raced down the steps in her pajamas, Mrs. Brighton hurrying after her with a robe. "Sabine!" The little girl launched herself into Sabine's arms the moment she stepped from the car. "You came back!" Sabine held her close, breathing in the scent of children's shampoo and the faint trace of the cookies they'd baked together last week. "Of course I did, sweetheart." "Forever?" Arya asked, leaning back to search Sabine's face with solemn eyes. Sabine glanced at Branko, who watched them with naked adoration. "If that's what you want," she said softly. "It's what we both want," Branko confirmed, moving to embrace them both. For a moment, they stood together under the starry sky, a family constellation newly formed, yet somehow ancient in its rightness. Later, after Arya had been tucked back into bed with promises of pancakes in the morning, Branko led Sabine not to the east wing, but up the grand staircase to the master suite. At her questioning look, he brought her hand to his lips. "If you're ready," he murmured against her skin, "I want to fall asleep with you in my arms tonight, and wake with you beside me tomorrow." The vulnerability in his request, the careful respect for her boundaries, moved Sabine deeply. In answer, she rose on tiptoe to press her lips to his, pouring all her love, her certainty into the kiss. Their passion, held in check through so many quiet conversations and lingering glances, finally found expression as they moved together toward his bed. Each touch, each whispered endearment, built a bridge between their worlds, a bridge of understanding, of acceptance, of love that transcended background and circumstance. And when they finally lay entwined in the darkness, breathless and sated, Sabine knew with bone-deep certainty that she had found her true home. Not in a mansion or an apartment, but in the arms of the man who had seen past every difference to the heart of who she was. "No more running away," Branko murmured against her hair, his arms tightening around her. "Promise me." Sabine pressed a kiss to his chest, directly above his heart. "No more running," she promised. "From now on, we face everything together." As sleep claimed them, tangled in each other's embrace, the last of Sabine's doubts dissolved like sugar in hot tea. There would be challenges ahead, disapproving friends, cultural differences, the ghost of Elizabeth, but none of them seemed insurmountable. Now, not when they had found in each other something so rare, so precious, a love that recognized no boundaries, that transformed two separate lives into something far greater than either could have been alone. Chapter 6. Bitter Challenges. By mid-July, 2 months after Sabine had moved into the Luca mansion, their relationship had blossomed into something neither could have anticipated. Even Mrs. Brighton's cool demeanor had warmed slightly in the face of their evident happiness. The preliminary designs for the community center should be ready by Friday, Branko mentioned one evening as they prepared for bed. The architects incorporated your suggestion about the teaching kitchen layout. Sabine smiled, watching his reflection. If construction stays on schedule, we could break ground by early September. August, he corrected. I had the permit process expedited. The consideration behind this seemingly mundane detail made her heart swell. Crossing to him, she pressed a kiss between his shoulder blades. Thank you for making this happen. He turned, gathering her against his chest. Your dreams matter to me, all of them. His fingers traced her jawline, even the ones you've set aside for now. Their peaceful moment shattered with the harsh trill of Sabine's phone. The screen displayed Marina's name, her mother's day nurse. Marina. Alarm sharpened Sabine's voice. What's wrong? Branko immediately tensed beside her, watching concern transform her features. How high? Sabine demanded, already moving toward the closet. Did you give her the emergency medication? Yes, we're coming right now. She ended the call, hands trembling. Mom's fever has spiked to 104, and she's having trouble breathing. Marina says it's the worst flare she's seen. Without hesitation, Branko was also in motion. We'll take her to Charleston Memorial, he said, his calm voice anchoring her. I'll call Dr. Levine personally. He won't come, Sabine protested. He has a 6-month waiting list. Branko cupped her face between his hands. He will come. For you, for us, he will come. Trust me, Sabine. At the East Wing apartment, they found Constance struggling for each breath, her normally warm brown skin ashen with illness. Marina administered oxygen while Arya hovered in the doorway, her young face pinched with worry. The ambulance is 3 minutes out, Marina reported. Sabine knelt beside her mother, taking her fragile hand. Hang on, Mama. Constance's eyes fluttered. Open. Don't look so worried, baby girl, she managed between labored breaths. Your pretty face will wrinkle. Grandma Constance? Arya's small voice came from the doorway. The child approached cautiously, clutching a stuffed rabbit. I brought Hoppy. He helps me when I'm scared. The simple gesture brought tears to Sabine's eyes. That's mighty thoughtful, sweet child, Constance whispered, managing a weak smile. At the hospital, white corridors and urgent medical terms blurred around Sabine as doctors whisked Constance away. In the harsh fluorescent lighting of the waiting room, Branko's steady presence became her anchor. She's strong, he murmured against her temple, like her daughter. I can't lose her, Branko. She's been my constant star since Dad died. And now you have more stars in your constellation, he replied. It doesn't diminish her light, it expands your sky. When Dr. Levine arrived 40 minutes later, Sabine's gratitude overshadowed her surprise. After examining Constance, the doctor emerged with cautious optimism. The lupus has caused significant inflammation in her lungs, he explained, but we've started aggressive treatment that should reduce the inflammation within 48 hours. With proper care, she should recover. Relief made Sabine's knees buckle. Branko's arm around her waist kept her upright as the doctor continued outlining the treatment plan. Will require extended hospitalization and home care, Dr. Levine was saying. The medication regimen is complex and expensive, but cost is not a concern, Branko stated. Whatever Mrs. Tessa needs, she will have. In Constance's room, monitors beeped a reassuring rhythm as she slept. Sitting beside her bed, Sabine felt Branko's hand on her shoulder, a touch that conveyed more than words ever could. Go check on Arya, she suggested after a while. I'll stay with Mom. After he left, Constance stirred, her eyes opening to find Sabine beside her. That man looks at you the way your father looked at me, like you hung the moon and stars. He's extraordinary, Mom. What he's done for us, it's not what he's done, child. It's who he is. Constance's wisdom shone through her tired eyes. A man's actions in a crisis reveal his true character. Remember that. When Branko returned, his expression was troubled. From his pocket, he withdrew a tablet, opening it to display a gossip website. The headline screamed, Lucer's Kitchen Conquest, Billionaire's Affair with Staff Heats Up. Below it, photos of them entering the hospital, his arm protectively around. Her waist, horror washed through Sabine. "Branko, I don't," he interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "This changes nothing." But Arya, what if she sees this? Your investors, your business partners, let them see, his jaw tightened. Let them see a man supporting the woman he loves during a family emergency. Let them see what actually matters. A nurse entered with medication for Constance. "Mr. Luca, there are photographers gathering at the main entrance. Security asked if you'd prefer to use the staff exit when you leave." "We'll handle this properly," he assured her, before turning to the nurse. "Please inform hospital administration that any staff who leak patient information will face legal consequences. And yes, we'll use the staff exit. Thank you." When they were alone again, Sabine found herself trembling with anger. "This isn't what you signed up for, having your private life splashed across gossip sites." "Isn't it?" His expression softened as he moved closer. "I believe I signed up for a life with you, Sabine Tessa. Every aspect of it, the joy and the challenges, the private moments and the public scrutiny." His thumbs traced gentle patterns on her skin. "What matters is in this room, in my home with Arya, in the community center we're building. The rest is just noise." 3 days passed in a blur of hospital visits and careful evasion of persistent paparazzi. On the 4th morning, as dawn painted Charleston's skyline, Sabine stood by the hospital window while Constance slept peacefully. "You should rest," came Branko's voice from the doorway. He entered carrying coffee, dark circles beneath his eyes, testament to his own exhaustion. "Look who's talking," she replied. "You've been awake since 4. Conference call with Zagreb," he explained. "The time difference is unforgiving." A knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Levine entered, reviewing Constance's chart with satisfaction. "The inflammation markers are decreasing steadily," he informed them. "Another 48 hours of intravenous treatment, then we can transition to oral medications. She's responding extraordinarily well." Relief cascaded through Sabine. "When can she come home? I'd like to keep her through the weekend for observation, but barring complications, Monday discharge seems reasonable." Branko's hand found the small of her back. "He's right. You need proper rest. Go home. Sleep in a real bed." Constance, awake now and following the conversation, added her own insistence. "Go on, baby girl. This old body's on the mend." As they prepared to leave, Dr. Levine handed Branko a folder of information about the specialized equipment needed for Constance's continued recovery. "I'll have my assistant coordinate delivery and installation today," Branko replied. "And the private nursing schedule, son," Constance interrupted, her voice stronger than it had been in days. "Come sit here a minute." Surprised, Branko complied, taking the chair beside her bed. "You've moved heaven and earth for my daughter and me," she said, holding his gaze with unexpected intensity. "But there's something you should know about us Tessa women. We value our independence fiercely. I need to contribute something to my own care, you understand. Need to maintain my dignity." Understanding dawned in Branko's expression. He nodded slowly. "What do you suggest, Constance?" "First, I still have my insurance from teaching. It won't cover everything, but it'll cover something. I want that applied first." "Of course," he agreed without hesitation. "And when I'm well enough, I want to help with the community center, not just as window dressing. I taught disadvantaged children for 30 years. I have something to contribute." "The educational programming director position remains unfilled," he said thoughtfully. "We'll need someone who understands both the community's needs and effective teaching methodologies." The perfect solution brought tears to Sabine's eyes. As they finally left the hospital through a service corridor, Branko's arm protective around her shoulders, Sabine reflected on her mother's earlier words. "A man's actions in a crisis reveal his true character." "What are you thinking?" he asked as they reached his car. Sabine reached up to touch his face. That I love you, not for what you've done, though that's extraordinary, but for who you are, for how you see us, all of us, as whole people, not extensions of yourself. His arms encircled her, drawing her against his chest in the hospital parking garage. You've taught me that loving someone means supporting their wholeness, not diminishing it, he murmured against her hair. It's the most valuable lesson I've ever learned. As they drove home, fingers intertwined, Sabine recognized that they had crossed another threshold together. This crisis had revealed the strength of their connection, the compatibility of their values, and the depth of their commitment, not just in passion's easy moments, but in life's challenging realities. Looking down at her peaceful face as she slept against his shoulder, Branko felt something shift within his chest, a certainty that transcended their current arrangement. One day soon, he promised himself, he would ask this extraordinary woman to be his wife. Chapter 7. A Recipe for Trust. By early August, 6 weeks after her hospitalization, Constance had recovered enough to oversee the educational planning for the East Harbor Community Center. Though she required ongoing medication, her strength had returned sufficiently for part-time work. These architectural plans look promising, Constance remarked, studying the blueprints. But we'll need more natural light in the children's classroom area. Sabine nodded, making notes. The permit approvals came through yesterday and groundbreaking is scheduled for next Tuesday. Ahead of schedule, Branko added as he entered. The contractor believes we can complete the structural work by October if weather cooperates. The project had evolved rapidly, transforming from Branko's initial gesture into a true collaboration. Local craftspeople had been hired from East Harbor itself, creating immediate economic impact even before the center's opening. As Branko and Constance discussed budget allocations, Sabine's phone rang. Letitia's name flashed on the screen. I'll take this outside, she murmured, stepping onto the terrace. Hey, Tish. Girl, why didn't you tell me? Letitia demanded. I had to hear about your engagement from Jerome's cousin who works security. At the hospital, Sabine froze. My what? Your engagement to Branko Luka, it's all over page 6, billionaire CEO to wed chef girlfriend in fall ceremony. There's even a blurry photo of you wearing what looks like a ring. Sabine recalled the antique emerald ring Branko's grandmother had left him, a family heirloom he'd shown her last week. She tried it on briefly before returning it to its velvet box. Tish, I'm not engaged, she clarified. That's completely made up. Oh, well, damn. I was all ready to be offended about not being told first, but now I'm just disappointed. You two are perfect together. The vote of confidence from her traditionally skeptical friend warmed Sabine's heart. Speaking of everything, Letitia segued, whatever happened with that fancy cooking school inquiry, the one from Paris you mentioned last month? The question caught Sabine off guard. In the chaos of Constance's illness and the accelerated community center timeline, she'd almost forgotten the prestigious Laurent Culinary Institute's unexpected interest. I never followed up, she admitted. The timing was impossible with Mom's health crisis, and honestly, it felt less important than what's happening here. Letitia's tone carried knowing skepticism. The Sabine I grew up with would have moved mountains to study at Laurent. That was your dream since we were teenagers. Dreams evolve. Sabine replied, I'm building something meaningful here, something that impacts the community, not just my resume. And that's beautiful, Letitia agreed. But promise me you won't lose yourself completely in his world. Keep some dreams that are just yours. You know? The concern lingered after they ended the call. Had she surrendered too much of herself? Or had her priorities simply shifted as her heart found its true home? Penny for your thoughts, came Branko's voice behind her. He approached. With 2 glasses of iced tea, Sabine accepted the drink. Apparently we're engaged, according to page 6 anyway. A flicker of surprise crossed his features before understanding dawned. My grandmother's ring. Someone must have photographed me trying it on. She took a sip, watching his reaction. Letitia called to congratulate me. Branko turned to face her fully. Does it bother you? The assumption. What bothers me is having private moments hijacked for public consumption, she answered honestly. But the idea itself, no, that doesn't bother me at all. Something shifted in his expression, relief perhaps, or deeper emotion carefully contained. His hand covered hers on the balustrade. I have something to show you, he said. If you're free this afternoon. Mom's resting and I've finished the program outlines. What did you have in mind? Instead of answering, he offered his hand with a smile that transformed his serious features. Trust me? Always, she replied without hesitation. An hour later, they pulled up before a weathered building on Marsh Street. Antonio's, the small Portuguese restaurant where her father had worked for 15 years. It closed last year, she said, confusion evident. The owner retired and his children didn't want to continue it. Branko retrieved keys from his pocket. I know. Inside, the interior was dim and dusty, but fundamentally unchanged from her childhood memories. The worn wooden counter where she'd done homework. The corner booth where her father had taught her to fold napkins into swans. You bought Antonio's, she whispered, emotion constricting her throat. Why? Branko opened the blinds, afternoon sunlight streaming through smudged windows. This isn't about reviving the restaurant itself, unless that's what you want. In the kitchen, unlike the dining area, the space had been partially updated. New electrical outlets, ancient plumbing replaced. I thought this might be your personal test kitchen, he explained, running a hand along the butcher block island. A place to develop recipes for the community center, to experiment without worrying about flour explosions in the mansion's kitchen, a sanctuary that's entirely yours. The property officially belongs to the community center's non-profit entity, he continued. You'll have complete creative control, with the option to use it as a training restaurant for the culinary program graduates if you choose. The careful structure of ownership, giving her authority without charity, connecting her personal space to the larger mission, revealed how thoroughly he understood her pride and passion. Branko, she managed, voice thick with emotion. This is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me. He closed the distance between them, his expression revealing rare vulnerability. Is it too much? I worried it might feel like overstepping. She silenced him with a kiss, pouring all her gratitude and love into the connection. His response was immediate, arms encircling her waist, the passion between them igniting as it always did, swift and consuming. When they finally parted, both breathless, Sabine rested her forehead against his chest. It's perfect, a bridge between my past and our future. They spent the next hour exploring the space together, Sabine sharing memories associated with each corner of the restaurant, while Branko listened with genuine interest. I can see you here, Branko observed, as she moved around the kitchen with increasing animation, creating, teaching, connecting your heritage to our community's future. There's something else I'd like to show you, she said impulsively. A part of my world you haven't seen yet. 20 minutes later, they stood on East Harbor's public pier as the afternoon sun gilded the water. Around them, commercial fishermen unloaded their daily catch while children dangled lines, hoping for blue crabs. This is where my father brought me every Sunday morning, Sabine explained. We'd come at dawn to buy fish directly from the boats. Then he'd let me choose one special ingredient for our family dinner. He taught me that great cooking begins with respect for ingredients, she continued. That understanding where food comes from connects us to both the earth and to each other. Branko's arm settled around her shoulders. He sounds like a remarkable man. He was. She leaned into his warmth. simple in some ways, profound in others. He never earned much money, but he created such richness in our lives through food and wisdom. A comfortable silence fell between them. After a while, Branko spoke, his voice thoughtful. "My father built his business from nothing after immigrating," he said. "He worked 18-hour days, determined to create opportunities for me that he never had. But in the process, he missed much of my growing up. When Aria was born, I promised myself I wouldn't repeat his pattern. Then Elizabeth died, and suddenly work became both escape and purpose." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "It took meeting you to realize how much I was still missing. Not just with Aria, but in my own life. The joy of simple moments, the connection to something beyond quarterly reports and acquisition strategies. We're good for each other," she observed. "My practical needs grounded your generosity in meaningful action. Your resources turned my community dreams into concrete reality." "More than that," he countered, his gaze intense. "You've taught me to taste life again, Sabine. To savor moments instead of simply accumulating achievements." As the setting sun painted the harbor in fiery hues, Branko stood, drawing her to her feet. "There's somewhere else I'd like to go with you tonight, if you're willing." "Of course." "Where?" "Jackie's Diner," he replied. "For dinner with your friends. No security detail, no fancy car. Just us, burgers and fries, and the people who've known you since childhood." The request, so simple yet revealing such willingness to step into her world without protection, warmed her heart. "You'd do that? Risk being recognized, photographed, gossiped about?" "For you." His smile held tender certainty. Without hesitation. The evening that followed became one of the most memorable of Sabine's life. Jackie's Diner buzzed with Friday night energy, locals crowding vinyl booths and counter seats. To her delight, Branko navigated the unfamiliar social terrain with genuine openness, listening to Jerome, laughing at Jackie's outrageous stories, engaging Letitia's skeptical questions with disarming honesty. "So," Letitia asked during a momentary lull, her direct gaze challenging him across the table, "what exactly are your intentions with our girl here?" While Sabine flushed with embarrassment, Branko didn't hesitate. "To love her completely," he replied, "to support her dreams, whether they align with mine or take her in different directions, to create a partnership where we both become better versions of ourselves." The simple eloquence of his answer, devoid of flowery promises yet profound in its commitment, silenced even Letitia's protective skepticism. Later, as they walked hand in hand through her old neighborhood, Sabine felt a sense of completion she'd never expected. The two halves of her life were gradually merging, not with one consuming the other, but with each enriching what had come before. When they reached Antonio's, now her test kitchen, Branko pulled her into the shadow of the doorway. His kiss held reverence and desire in equal measure, his hands framing her face with tender appreciation. "Thank you for sharing your world with me tonight," he murmured against her lips. "For trusting me enough to introduce me to the people who matter to you." Sabine smiled, recognizing in his gratitude a mirror of her own feelings when he'd welcomed her into his life. "Partnership goes both ways," she replied, fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. "Your world, my world. They're becoming our world, aren't they?" His answering smile contained all the certainty she felt in her own heart. "Yes," he agreed simply, "and I wouldn't have it any other way." As they continued beneath East Harbor's streetlights, neighbors calling greetings from porches and children racing past on bicycles, Sabine recognized a fundamental truth. What they were building together contained the essential ingredients for lasting happiness. Trust formed through consistent respect for each other's needs and boundaries. Passion expressed not just physically, but in shared purpose and mutual growth. Understanding demonstrated through actions rather than mere words. And love manifested in the countless ways they supported each other's fullest expression of self while creating something greater together than either could accomplish alone. Chapter 8. Family Blend. By mid-September, the East Harbor Community Center's transformation had progressed dramatically. The main structure stood complete, windows installed to capture natural light according to Constance's specifications, and interior work proceeding rapidly. What had begun as a simple restoration had evolved into Sabine's passion project, with Branko providing not just financial backing, but his business expertise. The kitchen equipment arrives next Tuesday, Sabine informed Jerome as they toured the construction site. We're still on track for the November grand opening. Ahead of schedule, Jerome noted with approval. Those contractors your man brought in don't mess around. Later that afternoon, Sabine arrived at Aria's school for the fall academic showcase. Parents gathered in the auditorium, an eclectic mixture of Charleston's elite and scholarship families. As Sabine found a seat near the front, she noted curious glances. Branko's relationship with the former chef had become common knowledge. Mrs. Whitfield was just asking if you'd consider chairing the spring fundraiser, came Catherine Brighton's voice as she settled into the adjacent seat. Apparently your work with the East Harbor Center has impressed the board, though their relationship remained complex. Catherine had maintained civil cordiality since Constance's hospitalization. The older woman's appearance at the school event without Branko, who was concluding an acquisition in New York, represented tentative progress. That's kind of her to suggest, Sabine replied carefully. But I think my focus needs to remain on the center's opening and Aria's adjustment. Catherine's perfectly arched eyebrow rose slightly. Adjustment to what, precisely? Before Sabine could respond, the lights dimmed and students began filing onto the stage. Aria stood third from the end, her expression a mixture of nervousness and determination that so resembled her father that Sabine's heart clenched. The children's presentation proceeded smoothly until Malcolm Whitfield deliberately nudged Aria during her speaking part, causing her to stumble over her words. A ripple of snickers passed through the audience as Aria faltered. Sabine leaned forward, catching the child's eye with an encouraging smile and subtle thumbs up. The simple gesture seemed to center Aria, who squared her shoulders and continued with renewed composure. That was well done, Catherine remarked quietly. Elizabeth would freeze in public speaking situations as a child. Aria has more confidence. The unexpected comparison, offered without resentment, suggested Catherine's stance might be thawing further than previously evident. After the presentation, as parents mingled with teachers, Sabine found Aria surrounded by classmates discussing weekend plans. Dad says I can't come to Sophie's sleepover because he'll be back from New York and wants family time, Aria was explaining. It's not fair. Well, my mom says your dad is marrying the cook, Malcolm Whitfield interjected with childish malice. She says that's why you can't come. Your new fake mom wants to play house. Before Sabine could intervene, Aria drew herself up to her full height, eyes flashing with unmistakable Luca determination. Sabine is not fake, she declared loudly. She makes Dad happy again, and she helped Grandma Constance get better when she was sick. Your mom is just jealous because she's getting divorced. Sabine moved forward quickly, placing a gentle hand on Aria's shoulder. That's enough, sweetheart. Let's remember to be kind, even when others aren't. Aria's defiance melted at Sabine's touch. But he said, I heard, Sabine acknowledged, and while I appreciate you defending me, bringing up painful family situations isn't the right approach. The child considered this with serious contemplation, like how Grandmother Catherine sometimes says things that hurt about you and Dad, but we try to understand she's still sad about Mom. The insightful comparison impressed Sabine deeply. Exactly like that. Hurt people sometimes hurt others. Understanding. That doesn't make their actions right, but it helps us respond with compassion. Later that evening, as they drove home through Charleston's historic district, Arya's earlier enthusiasm had dimmed into uncharacteristic quietness. Rain pattered against the car windows, matching the somber mood. "You were wonderful in the presentation," Sabine offered, glancing at the child's reflection. "Your father will be so proud when he sees the video." Arya continued, staring out the window. "Malcolm's right about one thing," she said finally. "You're not really my mom, not officially." The simple observation, delivered without drama but with unmistakable sadness, caught Sabine unprepared. "Arya," Sabine began carefully, "family isn't just about official papers or legal relationships. It's about love and trust and showing up for each other every day." "I know." The child's voice remained subdued. "But Sophie has a stepmom with papers and everything. They had a special ceremony where Sophie gave her flowers." Understanding dawned. Arya wasn't questioning their emotional bond, but craving the security of formal recognition, the public acknowledgement that their connection was permanent. "Would you like that?" Sabine asked gently. "For me to be your stepmom officially?" Arya's expression brightened momentarily before uncertainty clouded her features. "Would Dad want that? And what about Mom? Would she be mad in heaven?" "I believe your mom would want both you and your dad to be happy," she said. "As for what your father wants, that's something we'd need to discuss with him. But I can tell you what I want, if you'd like to hear it." Arya nodded eagerly, rain-streaked car windows creating an intimate cocoon for their conversation. "I want to be in your life forever," Sabine said simply. "Whether that's as your father's wife and your stepmom, or simply as someone who loves you with my whole heart. The title matters less to me than the relationship we've already built." Arya unbuckled her seatbelt and leaned forward to wrap her arms around Sabine's neck. "I want you to be my stepmom," she whispered, "with papers and everything." That night, after Arya had been tucked into bed, Sabine found herself drawn to Elizabeth's former studio. Moonlight filtered through sheer curtains, illuminating framed photographs that captured Arya's early years and Branko's rare, unguarded smiles. "She was talented," came Catherine's voice behind her. The older woman stood in the hallway, elegant even in her nightgown and robe. Elizabeth had a gift for capturing people's essence, particularly Branko's. Instead of retreating, Sabine took a leap of faith. "Would you tell me about her? Not just as Arya's mother or Branko's wife, but as herself?" After a moment's consideration, Catherine entered the studio, moving to a specific photograph. "This was taken in Croatia at Branko's family home," she explained. "Elizabeth fell in love with the light there, said it revealed truth in ways American sunshine couldn't manage." For the next hour, Catherine shared stories, gradually revealing a portrait of her daughter as a creative soul, with quiet strength, unexpected humor, and profound loyalty. "She would have liked you," Catherine said finally, the admission clearly difficult, yet genuine. "Not at first. She was protective of what was hers, but eventually she would have recognized your authentic heart. Thank you for sharing her with me," Sabine said simply. "It helps me understand Arya better, and Branko." Catherine studied her with thoughtful consideration. "You truly love them, don't you? Not the lifestyle or the security, but them, with all their complexities and wounds." "Yes," Sabine affirmed without hesitation. "They're the family I never expected, but now can't imagine living without." Something shifted in Catherine's expression. Not complete acceptance, perhaps, but a significant step beyond reluctant tolerance. "Then I wish you well, Sabine Tessa, for their sakes, if nothing else." When Branko returned the following evening, he found Sabine and Arya in the kitchen, flour dusting their cheeks as they shaped Croatian star cookies from his grandmother's recipe. "There are my favorite people," he announced, dropping his briefcase, to sweep Arya into a hug that left white handprints on his expensive suit. "We have something to ask you, Daddy," Arya declared once the initial excitement settled. "Something important." Branko raised an eyebrow at Sabine, who gave a small nod of encouragement. "This sounds serious," he observed. "Should I sit down?" "Probably." Arya confirmed, her expression solemn. "It's about family stuff." Once seated at the kitchen island, Branko gave his daughter his complete attention. "Sabine and I talked yesterday," Arya began carefully, "about how she's not officially my stepmom, even though she does all the things a mom does. And I was wondering..." She hesitated, sudden shyness overtaking her. "I think what Arya is asking," Sabine interpreted softly, "is whether you've considered making our family arrangement more official." Understanding dawned in Branko's expression, followed by something that looked remarkably like relief. Without speaking, he left the kitchen, returning moments later with a small velvet box that Sabine recognized immediately. "I've been carrying this for weeks," he admitted, his usual confidence giving way to uncharacteristic nervousness, waiting for the right moment, practicing speeches that never seemed adequate. He knelt before them both, father looking up at daughter and the woman who had transformed their lives. Opening the box revealed his grandmother's emerald ring, the vintage setting catching evening light. "Sabine Tessa," he began, voice rough with emotion. "You came into our lives believing you were simply fulfilling a professional role. Instead, you awakened joy in a grieving child and hope in a man who'd forgotten how to dream beyond survival." His hand reached for hers. "You've rebuilt not just our family, but our capacity for happiness. Would you do us the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife and Arya's mother in every way that matters?" Before Sabine could respond, Arya interjected with childish practicality. "Say yes. I already told Malcolm Whitfield you would be my real mom soon." The innocent presumption drew laughter from both adults. Sabine knelt beside Branko, bringing herself to eye level with Arya while maintaining the connection of his hand in hers. "Ari, you certain this is what you want?" she asked the child seriously. "It's a big decision for all of us." Arya nodded without hesitation. "You make the best cookies. You know how to fix Dad when he's grumpy. And you help me remember Mom without feeling sad. Plus, Grandma Constance says you're good for us." "High praise indeed," Branko murmured, his thumb tracing patterns on Sabine's palm. "But we're still waiting for your answer, love." "Yes," she whispered, emotion making her voice catch. "Yes, to being your wife, to being Arya's mother, to creating a family with both of you." Joy transformed Branko's features as he slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, as though it had been designed for her hand across generations. His kiss held reverence and passion in equal measure, mindful of their audience, yet unable to fully contain the depth of his emotion. Arya's excited clapping broke them apart, her exuberance demanding participation in this pivotal family moment. Branko opened his arms, creating space for his daughter in their embrace. For several heartbeats they remained thus connected, the three of them holding tight to one another, forming a circle of belonging that transcended biology or circumstance. That night, after Arya had fallen asleep, Branko and Sabine retreated to their bedroom. As the door closed behind them, their coming together held the urgency of celebration, the tenderness of gratitude, and the deeper passion that grew from knowing this connection was now formally acknowledged as permanent. Later, as moonlight painted silver patterns across their entwined forms, Sabine found herself studying the emerald ring that now adorned her hand, a physical symbol of belonging to this family that had become her home. "What are you thinking?" Branko murmured against her hair. Sabine smiled, pressing a kiss to his chest directly above his heart. "That family is like the perfect recipe," she answered softly. "It requires quality ingredients, careful attention, and sometimes unexpected additions to achieve its full potential. His quiet laughter vibrated against her cheek. Ever the chef, even in bed you think in culinary metaphors. It's how I make sense of the world, she admitted, through tastes and textures and transformations. His kiss to her forehead conveyed tender understanding. Then what flavor are we, my love? This family we're creating? Sabine considered the question with appropriate seriousness. Complex, she decided finally, with depth that reveals itself gradually. Sweet but not cloying, substantial without being heavy. The kind of flavor that lingers pleasantly, making you want another taste. Poetic, he murmured appreciatively. And accurate, I think. As sleep began to claim them, tangled together in contented exhaustion, Sabine carried the warm certainty of belonging with her into dreams, not just to Branko, but to Arya, to this family they were creating together from grief and hope, from past and future, blended with love into something entirely new and precious. Chapter 9. Whispered Doubts. The October breeze carried the scent of salt water and possibility as Sabine stood at the edge of the community center's newly restored garden. 3 months had passed since she had accepted Branko's proposal, and in that time, their lives had intertwined with the inevitability of rivers joining the sea. The south wall framing will be complete by Wednesday, Jerome informed her, gesturing toward the bustling construction site. Faster than expected. Sabine nodded, pride swelling as she watched local craftsmen transform the once abandoned building. What had begun as Branko's gift had evolved into a shared vision, each bringing their unique strengths to the project. Her phone vibrated with a message from Arya. Dad says, "We need your opinion on flowers now, or grandmother will choose the boring ones." Smiling, Sabine texted back her imminent arrival. The wedding preparations had become a delicate dance between her simpler tastes and the grand expectations of Branko's social circle. Though Catherine Brighton's disapproval remained a constant undercurrent, the woman had at least maintained a veneer of civility in recent weeks. Progress, however slight. At the mansion, she found Branko and Arya in the solarium, surrounded by floral arrangements. The sight of them, dark heads bent together in serious consultation, created a familiar tightness in her chest. "Save us," Branko implored when he spotted her. "I apparently can't tell the difference between blush and ballet pink." A critical business deficiency, she teased, crossing to press a kiss to his temple. His hand found the small of her back instinctively. Arya looked up from her self-appointed task. "Grandmother says traditional roses are the only appropriate choice for a Luca wedding." "And what do you think?" Sabine asked. Arya pointed to an arrangement of vibrant wildflowers interspersed with herbs and delicate ferns. They remind me of your stories about your dad's garden." "They're perfect," she agreed, meeting Branko's eyes over Arya's head. "Wild and beautiful," he murmured. "Like the woman I'm marrying?" A discreet cough from the doorway interrupted the moment. Mrs. Winters stood with an envelope on a silver tray. "This just arrived for Ms. Tessa by courier, marked urgent." The thick cream envelope bore the embossed logo of Laurent Culinary Institute, one of the most prestigious cooking schools in the world. Sabine's heart quickened as she accepted it. "I'll just take Arya to choose her dress accessories," Mrs. Winters offered, ushering the reluctant child from the room. Alone with Branko, Sabine stared at the unopened envelope. "I didn't apply to Laurent," she said. "I couldn't afford their tuition even before..." "Before what?" His voice remained neutral, but tension had crept into his shoulders. "Before us, before my priorities changed." The letter was brief but extraordinary. An invitation to join Laurent's exclusive 6-month MasterChef program in Paris. All expenses paid through a newly established scholarship for exceptional culinary talents from non-traditional backgrounds. This, she began, words failing as she handed him the letter. Branko scanned it. An incredible opportunity. The kind of training you've mentioned wanting since we met. Sabine moved to the window, gathering her thoughts. Throughout her life, such an opportunity would have been the fulfillment of her greatest professional. A dream. Now it felt like a test with no correct answer. The timing is impossible, she said finally. 2 months before our wedding, the community center opening. Timing can be adjusted. Branko joined her, not touching her, giving her space to think. Programs can be deferred, weddings rescheduled. She turned to study his face. You think I should go? I think, he said with deliberate care, that I never want to be the reason you abandon your dreams. The generosity of his stance moved her deeply, yet something about the situation nagged at her instincts. How would Laurent even know about me? I've never submitted my work there. Branko's brow furrowed. Perhaps through the charity event catering, or the feature on the community center in Charleston magazine mentioned your culinary direction. Mrs. Winters appeared again. Ms. Catherine Brighton is here to see Miss Aria. She's waiting in the blue salon. Branko's jaw tightened. Please inform her that Aria will join her shortly. When they were alone again, Sabine voiced the suspicion forming in her mind. Catherine has connections in the culinary world through Elizabeth's family, doesn't she? His silence confirmed her theory. The timing is suggestive, he acknowledged. Anger flashed through Sabine. She thinks I'll choose career over family, that I'm that easily removed from your lives? Are you? The question was quiet, vulnerable in a way Branko rarely allowed himself to be. Sabine took his face between her palms. I spent my entire life working toward professional recognition, scraping for opportunities that wealthy students took for granted. This invitation would have been my dream. His hands covered hers. Would have been. Dreams change, Branko. Her voice softened. They evolve. The girl who dreamed of Paris couldn't imagine the woman who found a family, a purpose beyond individual, achievement. Relief softened his features as he drew her against his chest. I would have waited, he murmured into her hair. If you wanted to go, I would have waited forever. I know. And that certainty, that his love came without conditions, was precisely why she could choose differently. The irony is that Catherine's scheme has only confirmed what matters most. To me, their conversation was interrupted by Aria, breathless and clearly agitated. Grandmother says I should pick the pearl hair clips because they were Mom's, but I wanted the flower ones Sabine and I found. Her expression crumpled with the impossible weight of divided loyalties. I don't know what to do. Sabine knelt to Aria's level. What if we found a way to use both? The pearls could be attached to the flower clips, honoring your mum, while also reflecting your own choice. The solution brought immediate relief to Aria's features. Can we really do that? Absolutely, Sabine assured her. The most beautiful things often come from blending seemingly opposite elements. Branko's hand settled on her shoulder. I'll speak with your grandmother. Why don't you show Sabine the design you're thinking of? As he departed, Sabine led Aria to the craft table they'd set up for wedding projects. While helping the girl sketch her idea, she reflected on Catherine's continued attempts to create distance between them. Your grandmother loves you very much, she said carefully. I know. The child's response held unexpected maturity. She's afraid I'll forget Mom if I love you too. What do you think about that? Aria considered the question with endearing seriousness. I think love doesn't work that way. Dad says the heart isn't like a cup with only so much space. It's like those Russian dolls that fit inside each other. It just keeps getting bigger, to hold more people. Your father is a wise man, Sabine murmured, touched by both the sentiment and the knowledge that Branko had found such a beautiful way to explain complex emotions to his daughter. He wasn't always Arya confided. Before you came, he didn't smile much. Now he does, even when he doesn't know I'm looking. That evening, as Sabine prepared for bed, her phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. She opened it to find a link to a gossip blog featuring paparazzi photos of Marcel, her former colleague from Elite Catering. The accompanying article fabricated a past relationship between them, complete with manufactured quotes about their passionate affair and her ambition to marry wealth. Horror washed through her as she scrolled through the vicious fabrications. "What's wrong?" Branko's voice from the bathroom doorway startled her. "Nothing," she tried to dismiss, closing the phone, but his expression told her he wasn't convinced. With reluctant fingers, she handed him the phone. Watching his expression darken as he read the article sent a chill through her. Not fear of his anger, but fear that these lies might plant seeds of doubt. "Catherine sent this to my private email 10 minutes ago," he said finally, his voice controlled but tight with fury. "Along with concerns about your hasty decision to accept my proposal." Nausea rose in Sabine's throat. "The Paris offer, now this. She's trying to drive us apart from multiple angles." Branko set the phone aside, crossing to where she sat. He knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "Do you know what I told her?" he asked. Sabine shook her head, mesmerized by the intensity in his dark eyes. "That she should refrain from sending me tabloid garbage if she wants to maintain a relationship with her granddaughter." His voice remained even, but determination hardened his features. "I also informed her that while I respect her grief, her attempts to sabotage my future with you will not be tolerated." Despite everything, Sabine found herself defending the woman. "She's lost so much, Branko. Her only daughter, then watching you move forward." He shook his head in wonder. "Your compassion never ceases to amaze me. But Catherine's pain doesn't justify cruelty toward you." His expression softened. "What worries me more is how all this affects you. The Paris offer, the gossip, the subtle sabotage. I'm concerned about what it's doing to us." The vulnerability in his admission broke something open in Sabine's chest. She leaned forward until their foreheads touched. "Listen to me, Branko Luka," she said, her voice low and intense. "I love you. I want to marry you, to build a life with you and Arya. Paris, gossip, your mother-in-law, none of it changes that fundamental truth." He searched her face, weighing her words against his own fears. "And Paris, the opportunity?" Sabine's answer came with the clarity of absolute certainty. "There will be other opportunities, other programs, but there is only one you, one Arya, one us." Her hands framed his beloved face. "I choose that. Every time I choose that." The tension drained from his body as he gathered her into his embrace. They knelt together beside the bed, holding each other with the quiet desperation of those who had found something precious and feared its loss. "I was afraid," he confessed against her neck, "not of the lies, but that you might regret giving up your dreams for us." "You are my dream," she whispered. "You and Arya and this life we're building. The rest is just details." His kiss held all the desperation of temporary doubt vanquished by renewed faith, and Sabine responded with equal fervor. As clothing gave way to skin, as whispers became sighs of pleasure, they reaffirmed their commitment in the most primal, intimate language, bodies speaking what words could only approximate. Later, as they lay entwined in contented exhaustion, Branko traced idle circles on her shoulder. "I have a proposition," he murmured. Let's change our plans. Move the wedding forward to next month before the community center opening." His fingers continued their gentle exploration of her skin. "Small ceremony, just family and close friends." Sabine studied him in the dim light. "What about all the arrangements? The venue is booked for October, the invitations." "We can have the reception as planned," he said. "But the wedding itself, I don't want to wait." I don't want to give anyone, least of all Catherine, more time to interfere. The urgency in his voice touched her deeply. You're sure? His response wasn't words, but action, drawing her down into a kiss that left no doubt of his certainty. When they finally parted, breathless, he whispered against her lips, I've been sure since you first made my daughter laugh again. The rest has just been gathering courage to believe I deserve a second chance at happiness. Sabine's heart swelled with emotion. Then yes, she breathed against his mouth. Next month, next week, tomorrow, whenever you want, I'm ready to be your wife. As they surrendered to passion once more, the night cradling their intertwined forms, Sabine felt the last of her doubts dissolve. Whatever challenges awaited, they would face them together, bound by a love that had already weathered storms and emerged stronger for the tempering. Chapter 10. The perfect blend morning light gilded the Charleston harbor as Sabine stood on the balcony of her East Harbor apartment, watching the fishing boats navigate the channel markers. In 3 hours, she would become Branco's wife. The thought created a cascade of emotions too complex for simple categorization. Joy interwoven with wonder, anticipation brushed with reverence. There you are. Constance appeared in the doorway, radiant in a sapphire dress that complemented her dark skin. Shouldn't you be getting ready? I needed a moment, Sabine admitted, to remember where I came from before stepping into where I'm going. Understanding softened her mother's features. Your father would be bursting with pride today. She joined Sabine at the railing, not because you're marrying a wealthy man, but because you found someone who sees you, truly sees you. I see him too, Sabine said softly. The man behind. The CEO, the father, the widower. The man who still wakes from nightmares sometimes, who doubts his decisions, who carries the weight of hundreds of employees' livelihoods. That's how I knew you two were meant for each other, Constance replied. You found each other's hidden selves. When finally Sabine stood before the mirror, the reflection seemed both herself and a stranger, a woman wrapped in ivory silk that captured light like water, her curls adorned with tiny pearl-studded flowers that had been Aria's inspiration. It's missing something, Letitia declared, circling her with a designer's critical eye. A gentle knock interrupted her assessment. When Constance opened the door, Catherine Brighton stood in the hallway, elegant in dove grey, her expression composed, but tentative. May I speak with Sabine? She requested. After Constance and Letitia reluctantly departed, bride and former mother-in-law remained in charged silence. You look beautiful, Catherine said finally, surprising Sabine with what seemed genuine admiration. That silhouette suits your frame perfectly. Thank you. I'm glad you came today. It means everything to Aria. Catherine moved further into the room. Branco told me about your decision regarding Paris, she said abruptly, and your direct approach to my interference. It was unfair of me, the older woman admitted, her aristocratic posture softening slightly. Using your ambition as a weapon against what you and Branco are building. You were protecting Elizabeth's memory, Sabine offered, and Aria's well-being. No, Catherine's voice sharpened with unexpected self-criticism. I was protecting myself from change, from acknowledging that life continues even after unimaginable loss. Her gaze held resigned acceptance. Aria helped me see that. How? Sabine asked. She showed me the design for her hair accessory. She explained how she wanted to honor both her mothers, the one in heaven and the one here on earth. Her composure wavered slightly. She said something quite remarkable then. What's that? That her heart grew bigger to make room for loving you both, that she didn't have to forget to move forward. Catherine withdrew a small box from her handbag. It made me realize I've been unfair, not just to you and Branco, but to Elizabeth's memory as well. She was generous and kind. She would have wanted Aria to have a mother's love again, and Branco to find happiness. The box opened to reveal a delicate silver bracelet adorned with a single charm, a miniature whisk. This was Elizabeth's, Catherine explained. She loved to cook, not with your talent perhaps, but with great enthusiasm. Branko gave her this on their first anniversary. The gift moved Sabine deeply. I can't accept this. It should go to Arya when she's older. Arya will have many of her mother's things, Catherine said firmly. This is for you, a symbol that you have my blessing, however belatedly offered. She fastened the bracelet around Sabine's wrist. Elizabeth would want Branko and Arya to be happy. You make them happy. It's as simple and as complex as that. Before Sabine could respond, Arya burst into the room, resplendent in her flower girl dress. Grandma! Her eyes widened as she noticed the bracelet. You gave her mom's cooking bracelet? Yes, Catherine confirmed. I thought it would make a perfect something borrowed for today. The ceremony location had been Branko's suggestion, not a formal venue, but the mansion's gardens. As Sabine made her way through the house on her mother's piano music drifted through open French doors, mingling with the scent of roses and salt air. Ready? Constance asked at the garden threshold. Sabine took a deep breath. I've been ready since the night he first watched me cook for Arya. At the far end, beneath an arch of ivory roses, stood Branko, breathtakingly handsome in a charcoal suit. Beside him, Arya practically vibrated with excitement, her role as both flower girl and central witness filling her with importance. As the piano transitioned to the processional, all eyes turned to Sabine. She moved forward on her mother's arm, each step carrying her closer to the future she had chosen. Not a fairy tale of rescued princess and wealthy prince, but a genuine partnership between equals who recognized in each other something essential and irreplaceable. When she reached him, Branko's expression made her heart stutter in her chest. Beyond the obvious admiration for her appearance lay something far more profound. Gratitude, wonder, and vulnerability that few ever witnessed in the powerful CEO. You are magnificent, he whispered, as Constance placed Sabine's hand in his. The ceremony reflected their journey. Elements of Branko's Croatian heritage blended with traditions from Sabine's background. They had written their own vows, promising not perfection, but partnership, not fairy tale romance, but real, enduring love capable of weathering inevitable storms. Sabine, Branko began, his accent more pronounced with emotion. Before you, I existed but didn't live. You brought color back to a world rendered gray by loss. You showed me that second chances aren't just possible, but can be more profound than first beginnings, because they're chosen with greater wisdom. His hands tightened around hers. I promise to honor your independence while celebrating our connection, to support your dreams as fervently as my own, to create a home where your spirit can flourish alongside mine. Tears blurred Sabine's vision as she responded. Branko, I never believed in fate until I met you, until one bowl of soup created a bridge between worlds that seemed impossibly separate. You've taught me that true strength lies in vulnerability, that genuine partnership requires neither sacrifice nor compromise, but mutual elevation. Her thumbs traced gentle patterns on his skin. I promise to honor the past that shaped you while building our future, to challenge you when you need truth and support you when you need strength, to create with you a family bound not by obligation, but by choice and love. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Branko cupped Sabine's face with reverent hands. Their first kiss as married partners held all the passion, tenderness, and promise that had characterized their journey. A communion of souls that transcended physical desire. Arya's delighted applause broke the spell. Branko extended his arm, inviting his daughter into their embrace, their first official moment as a family of three. We did it, Arya exclaimed. We're really a family now. Sabine knelt to the child's level. We were already a family, she said gently. This just makes it official for everyone else to see. The intimate reception that followed reflected their blended lives. East Harbor friends mingling with Branko's business associates, Croatian dishes served alongside Sabine's father's recipes, classical quartet music occasionally giving way to the jazz Constance loved. When it came time for their first dance, Branko led Sabine to the center floor with quiet confidence. As the music began, a Croatian love song his parents had danced to at their own wedding, he drew her against his heart. "Happy, Mrs. Luka," he murmured, his breath warm against her temple. "Beyond any measure," she replied, tilting her face to his. "And you, husband?" His answer came not in words, but in a kiss that drew appreciative murmurs from their guests, not the restrained gesture expected at formal occasions, but something deeper, more honest. As evening approached, they stood together on the terrace, overlooking the garden. Below them, Arya danced with Jerome, while Constance engaged Catherine in what appeared to be genuinely amicable conversation. Nearby, Letitia laughed at something one of Branko's Croatian cousins said, the diverse gathering, flowing together in harmonious celebration. "Look at that," Branko said softly, his arms secure around her waist. "Your community and mine becoming ours." Sabine leaned into his strength. "Like your grandmother's recipes and my father's techniques, creating something neither could have imagined, alone." Their kiss, illuminated by the golden light of approaching sunset, sealed this truth more eloquently than any words could have. When they finally parted, it was only because Arya had bounded up the terrace steps, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Grandmother says I can stay at her house tonight," she announced, "so you can have a proper honeymoon start." The unexpected gesture from Catherine touched them both. Branko knelt to his daughter's level. "Would you like that, butterfly?" Arya nodded with precocious solemnity. "Mrs. Brighton says newlyweds need privacy to establish proper matrimonial bonds." Her perfect recitation of what was clearly Catherine's phrasing made Sabine bite her lip to suppress laughter. "Besides," Arya added in a conspiratorial whisper, "Grandmother promised to tell me stories about Mom when she was little." The thoughtfulness of Catherine's offer revealed a depth of growth that seemed almost miraculous given their contentious history. Later, after guests had departed and Arya had gone with Catherine, Branko carried Sabine across the threshold of the master suite. Rose petals scattered across the bed and champagne chilling in silver welcomed them. "Perfect," Sabine breathed, taking in the romantic scene. "Almost," Branko corrected, setting her gently on her feet. With deliberate tenderness, he reached for the pins securing her veil, removing them one by one until her curls cascaded freely. His fingers lingered on Elizabeth's bracelet, a fleeting acknowledgement of the past that had shaped their present. Now it's perfect. What followed transcended their previous intimacy. Each caress weighted with new significance, each kiss sealed with permanent promise. Their bodies revealed new landscapes of connection as husband explored wife, as wife welcomed husband. In the quiet aftermath, as moonlight painted silver patterns across tangled sheets, Sabine rested her head on Branko's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart, a sound that had become her true north, her definition of home. "Tell me your thoughts," he requested, fingers tracing patterns along her spine. She smiled against his skin. "I was thinking about journeys, how the most important ones rarely follow expected paths. Like a chef from East Harbor and a CEO from Croatia finding each other over soup." His voice held gentle amusement. "Exactly." She raised herself to look into his face. "A year ago, I thought success meant a restaurant of my own, a claim for my cooking, financial security through my own efforts alone." His hand cupped her cheek. "And now, Now I understand that true success is measured in moments like this. In Arya's laughter, in your trust, in the community we're building together, in creating a life that nourishes not just bodies, but souls. Branko's eyes darkened with emotion as he drew her down for a kiss that swiftly rekindled the embers of their earlier passion. As desire flared between them once more, he whispered against her lips, "Then we are the most successful people alive." Their bodies joined with the certainty of pieces created for each other, their movements a dance choreographed by growing knowledge and deepening love. Later, as dawn's first light painted the horizon with promise, Branko traced the curve of her shoulder. "What shall we create together next, Mrs. Luca?" he asked, the simple question encompassing all their future possibilities. Sabine smiled, pressing closer into the shelter of his body. "Everything," she whispered against his skin. "One day at a time, one dream at a time, we'll create everything." Outside their window, Charleston awakened to a new day. Inside the mansion that had once felt like alien territory to Sabine, now transformed into the heart of their shared kingdom, husband and wife drifted towards sleep, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges awaited, they would face them as they had faced everything since that first bowl of soup brought them together. Together, equal partners in a love story written not by fate or fortune, but by the courage to see beyond circumstance to the essential truth of each other's hearts.